On day 5 lunch, let's see what we've got. Nut cake and biscuits. Ooh, looks like mee goreng. I think today is like a Malay food day, man. Nasi lemak for breakfast earlier. Wow, this is the low carb version. Oh my, oh my. Okay, this is hilarious. I gotta actually show this to you. These are like the cutest png kueh I've ever seen. They're so small. I think these are like siu mai? I don't know. Veggies and then fried noodles. Okay, so it's not mee goreng. I think it's like Chinese style fried noodles. Yeah, and then the cake. Okay, cool. I'm gonna get my cutlery and then we're gonna start eating. Fish, right. Wait, can I actually eat the orange? I guess I can. Actually really curious to see how this tastes. It's alright. I've had better. Yeah, I think like 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't like be able to eat these noodles. Like I was that picky of an eater, right? But these days I'm just like, oh, okay. Like they're still not my favorite things in the world, but I'll eat them. So you've been following the news. There's a coup took place in Myanmar, right? Essentially, the military detained the elected political leaders and basically took over the government, crying election fraud, which seems to be the rallying cry of dictators worldwide these days, you know, whenever elections don't go their way. Yeah, alright, I mean, Trump did it. And I guess Myanmar took a leaf from his book and basically are going along the same line, crying widespread fraud. Except the difference between Trump and the Myanmar military is well, I guess in Myanmar's case, the army was willing to launch an actual coup. So there have been widespread protests going on in Myanmar. And in spite of government like shutting down the internet, Facebook access and stuff like that, images are getting out. I really don't know how this is going to be resolved, right? If you're talking about regional pressure, I think tough luck. ASEAN is notorious for essentially not bothering to intervene in their neighbors' affairs, even when the worst or some of the most dramatic things in the world are happening, right? Like when Myanmar was committing genocide on the Rohingyas, nobody in ASEAN was taking like concrete measures to put a stop to that. When the Philippines was essentially, carrying out extrajudicial killings under the guise of an anti-drug program, when Duterte first took over, nobody gave. The rest of ASEAN didn't really step in to condemn it or to take concrete actions to put a stop to that. We've had countless examples from the years, right? Like Indonesia committing genocide against the people of East Timor. And if you look at it, essentially within the region as well, governments in this part of the world are pretty dysfunctional when measured from a free and open perspective, right? Like, literally, I think that the two most democratic countries, and this might just be a reflection of my personal ignorance, but like the two most democratic countries one might actually think of, or the top three at least, Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, and none of them, I think you would probably tell the world that are model nations for open democracy lah, right? There's a lot of restriction on speech, for example, in all of these areas. Okay, to be fair, I don't really know much about Indonesia. What I do know is that in recent years they've gotten a lot more open, a lot more democratized, and it shows also. Even in the sort of foreign investments which are now attracting, because I do believe that there is a direct correlation between how open a country's society is and how likely they're going to attract investors. So of course there's a lot of cynical people who say that investors really don't care about whether your country is democratic or respects the rule of law. So long as they can earn money, they'll come. But I think all of these other things actually feed into an ecosystem that promotes the very conditions that builds business, right? When you have an open economy, where you have a society where people are free to speak without having to fear whether they're going to get arrested or censored, you know, it's a free marketplace of ideas. Generally, I think people get smarter, they learn to think more. They don't... How do I put it? Not everyone is just blindsided by a single truth. Or to believe that, you know, there's only one version of the facts which are true. People learn to be more nuanced, right, in how they view the world. And the reason why I say like this part of the world is dysfunctional is if you look at it, right? What do we have? So Philippines has Duterte, and his well, not very subtle efforts to undermine civil liberties and democratic norms in that country. By the way, you should like if anyone's interested in watching about it, I think there was a documentary about the Marcoses some time back. God, the name eludes me at the moment, but I might put it in the link later. You should just watch it and just see the access to which like the Marcoses, you know, essentially robbed the nation of the Philippines back when they were running it lah. And the scary thing is that they're now coming back to power. It would seem with the cooperation and support of Duterte. We've had Malaysia, right, and we've seen how bad it got when Najib was in charge. So I mean, like recently he was convicted of in respect of one of the 1MDB related cases. The matter's gone up on appeal, and there are a couple of other trials still ongoing. But Malaysia also has a history of essentially disregarding civil liberties, detentions without trial, massive corruption. Singapore, well, I'm in a country right now, right, and I think the fact that I'm not going to say anymore probably speaks volumes about what you know I'm going to say lah. It's not exactly secret knowledge. You can just go online and read about what this country is famous for when it comes to its human rights and civil liberties track record. Well, I think one thing which is obviously non-controversial is that this country holds a record for detaining without trial the longest prisoner of conscience, Dr. Chia Taipo. In 38 years? Yeah, something ridiculous like that. God, I mean, can you think about it? 38 years locked up without trial. Is it 38 years? Right. 23 years without trial. House arrest for another 9 years. So I guess 32 years. God, 32 years of detention. I'm turning 32 this year, so essentially my entire lifespan, this guy spent it being detained. And again, like I said, the rest of ASEAN didn't really give a shit, right? We have Laos, which I think simply because the world doesn't care as much, people don't really know what the hell is going on, but it's essentially a communist junta running the country. We have Thailand, where the Thai military launched a coup and are now running the country as well. We have Brunei, which is an absolute monarchy. Myanmar, I mean we talked about it earlier. Cambodia, essentially Hun Sen has consolidated power, expelled or arrested all his political opposition. This is a region, I mean a part of the world that really doesn't place a premium um, at least their leaders, they don't place a premium on promoting freedom of speech, dissent, and arguably even like free and fair elections, right? It's a region that idolizes strongmen, like people who claim I have power, listen to me, and I'll fix everything. And scarily enough, I mean, it's a trend that you see being replicated and amplified across the world. Trump probably being the most notorious example, but we have Bolsonaro in Brazil, Modi in India, Xi Jinping in China. I mean, the guy came to power and then essentially got the country to change its law and basically allows him to be president for life lah. There used to be a term limit for the presidents, but not anymore. And China's a interesting topic, right? Because I mean, I don't know how many of you coming from Chinese families will have to deal with family members who are fanatically loyal to this notion of China which they see in their mind, and this idea of China is indivisible or inseparable from the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government, right? And in their view, to be Chinese is to support China unequivocally, and by consequence also to support the Chinese Communist Party and all their decisions, right? And the loyalty goes to the extent where they would essentially forgive or countenance or even outright support atrocities like the genocide of the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. So I mean, like, people always ask, how the hell could the Holocaust have happened? How can humans be driven to allow, other humans to be put into camps, worked to death, gassed? How can you actually allow your fellow human beings to be put into camps against their will, right? And you think, wow, the Nazis must have been something, this was truly extraordinary. But really, is it so extraordinary? I mean, we're living in a world where it's literally happening right under our noses right now. For the most part, people don't care. And those who know about it, a significant majority would even stand by and say, yeah, they're justified in doing it. Oh no, it's not a camp, it's education. It's really for their own good, it's for reintegration, assimilation. And then they get really upset with you when you try to engage with them on the topic. It's like they trying to think of you as a blood traitor. Wow, how can you say that? You sure you're Chinese, huh? It's the sort of rhetoric that you would more often than not expect maybe from like a rabid ultra-nationalist, racist, someone like a member of the Ku Klux Klan, or some of the more extremist racial conservative groups in Malaysia. Don't want to name names, but you know who I'm talking about lah. Alright. Honestly, it's no different. And frankly, honestly, the actions of the Chinese government, and to a lesser extent, this sort of nominal support which they get from the people as well, puts me in a very conflicted position, right? Like, identity-wise, I'm not gonna deny my Chinese heritage, but it has to be decoupled from the identity of Chinese as a nationality, China as a political state, and the government that's running it as well. So there are cultural links ethnic links, familial, ancestral based links with that country, with the people there. I'm not going to deny that. Alright. But politically, maybe even culturally at this point in time, the differences are too stark. I think it's something that needs to be, you know, when you talk about it, right, the word Chinese is such a loaded, multifaceted concept in itself that you probably have to unpack it to really realize, right, okay, what does it actually mean for you per se? Especially when some of the actions so-called taken by quote-unquote the Chinese conflict so strongly with your core identity. But I mean, like, honestly, really, why the hell would any human being, like, I don't know, maybe it's true that we can all be capable of extreme cruelty, but, you know, I just find it hard to accept that people are willing to stand by and say, oh yeah, it's perfectly alright to detain your fellow human being for no cause, put them in a camp, and restrict their liberty, possibly even torture and kill them. Like I've had people tell me, you know, they probably must have done something to deserve it, which is why this is happening to them, and I'm just flabbergasted by the response lah. It's sort of like, can you imagine a victim blaming the Jews for the Holocaust? Well, actually, you know what? I can, because Malaysia is a notoriously anti-Semitic country. So I bet you there would be people there who would think that the Holocaust was the best thing since sliced bread. And I get the sense sometimes, right, of the pride of seeing a strong China, of a so-called rising Chinese power, and through your ethnic ties and roots and identity, you want to feel like you know, culturally connected to that, and therefore you want to support it. But I don't think being proud of being Chinese means therefore that we have to accept unquestioningly or not be able to criticize things which we see that are obviously wrong. So I mean, just as China or the Chinese government has done some absolutely like abhorrent things, one cannot deny also that they have contributed significantly in various other aspects, which I think one may fairly say has been underreported or underappreciated by the rest of the world. Perhaps also due to the same sort of racism. Well, it doesn't mean therefore that just because they've been treated unfairly in one aspect, they get a free pass over all their other actions. Especially something as fundamental as cultural genocide or actual physical genocide, right? Of the people within your country. Some things are just like unforgivable. Like no amount of justification is gonna make right certain actions which are just plainly so far out there. I'm super full today. I don't think I'm gonna be able to eat the cake right now. I'm gonna leave it for a bit. I have juice. Let's see how this tastes. Pink guava. Alright, that's it for lunch. I will see you for dinner. Yeah. Goodbye, folks.